Cheers. So a few days ago I went to a prison. Now I've been to prisons before. I actually made a list of the prisons that I've been to, which is a little bit anal retentive for me, but we'll go ahead with it. I've been to Wentworth Jail in Western New South Wales. I've been to Richmond Jail in Tasmania. I've been to Fremantle Prison in Western Australia. And I've been to, if you'll excuse the expression, Fanny Bay Jail in Darwin. I've also been to Alcatraz, and so I've been to a few prisons now, and I don't like them. They're not my kind of place at all. They're not a place where I would want to spend any time, even though I have had family members who have. So I went to a very unusual prison this week, Pentridge Jail. Between 1851 and 1997, this is the one place in Victoria that nobody wanted to go. It's a fortress of bluestone walls and steel and misery. I don't like it. It's heritage listed, so they can't rip it down, so instead they did something different. Developers turned it into apartments and courtyards and gardens and a shopping centre, which is not too bad, and the shopping centre also has a cinema complex. If you want me to go to Pentridge Cinema and talk about it on the channel, let me know. So it's a very stylish shopping centre. It's kind of open and airy and beautiful, and people ride around it on electric animals. So Pentridge got me thinking about prison movies, and I thought I'd throw a few of them at you. 4 of them, in fact. Some of them are kind of mainstream, what you think of when you think of prison movies, but all of them are very watchable and highly recommended by me. Now, I've tried to go away from the obvious choices and do movies that maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, but if you have heard of them and you have watched them, maybe you should watch them again. Caged from 1950 is as hard as a prison movie gets. It is tough. It was directed by John Cromwell, who, by the way, was the father of James Cromwell, the actor. And it is highly recommended. Eleanor Parker won one of her 3 Oscar nominations, playing a young woman of 19 whose husband was killed in a robbery she took part in, and she's been sent to jail. Over the course of the movie, she goes from an innocent, scared young girl to a hardened criminal, and we see the whole process happening. With no support from her family or society, Marie is beaten down and tortured until she emerges at the end of the film as hard and as merciless as any of the people that made her that way. The movie's got a great supporting cast. We have Hope Emerson playing the archetype of the bulldog prison guard. All of the ones you've seen in other movies since then are based on Hope Emerson in Caged. There's Agnes Moorehead as the warden, who is very much a reformist, and we also get Jan Sterling, who people might remember from Detour, playing Smoochie, one of the other prisoners. This is a female-oriented prison film that's as uncompromisingly honest as any of the films of this genre featuring men, and like the best prison movies, it's a call to reform the institutions that punish crime in our societies. I really recommend this one. You should see it and recommend it to your friends. Don Siegel's Ride in Cell Block 11 from 1954 is another prison film which is hard and uncompromising. Filmed partly in Folsom Prison, it is a hard recommend from me. This one's been called the best prison film of all time by Quentin Tarantino. Like Caged, it's a hard, uncompromising look at a prison where reform is necessary. The well-meaning warden, played by Emil Meyer, is trying to get reforms past the local political machine and not succeeding at doing so. He gets a blanket refusal from them to address overcrowding, the brutal guards, the poor quality of food, and the refusal to remove sexual predators from the cell block, in spite of representations made to the authorities by a prisoner, James Dunn, played by Neville Brand in a career-best acting role. The supporting cast here is first class as well. They're not A-grade actors, because this movie was made on a relatively limited budget, but they are solid. You've got Frank Phelan playing a guard. We've also got Leo Gordon, who was an actor and a writer, who had also spent some time in prison. We got Paul Frees, who people know more as a voiceover actor than actor, playing a kind of wimpy, weak guard. And you also get Dabs Greer, who many years later played the older version of Tom Hanks's character in The Green Mile. Segal's direction gives the movie a documentary look in a lot of scenes, and the resolution is in its own way as harsh and realistic as Cage. Progress gets made, but at a very high price. There's a reason this movie has a Criterion edition. It's a superb piece of cinema. I have to thank my friend Jamie for putting me onto this film. He sold me a copy of this on VHS one day and told me I would really enjoy it, and indeed I did. David Lean's adaptation of Pierre Boulle's novel isn't the first movie you think of as a prison film, but it's very much a prison film. Based on the experiences of Allied soldiers who built the Thai-Burma Railway while prisoners of war, it's a complex, epic movie about pride, delusion, and the toll World War II wreaked on the minds of men. William Holden plays Shears, a prisoner who escaped from the prison camp and is sent back to blow up the Kwai River Bridge to destroy an important material link for the Japanese Empire. Alec Guinness is Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, the British officer supervising the construction, and Sesu Hayakawa, who in the 1920s was something of a heartthrob in pre-sound cinema, plays Colonel Saito, the commandant of the camp. Shot in some really lovely locations in Sri Lanka, this is one of the epic movies of the 1950s, addressing the fairly recent past of only a dozen years before and the nightmarish experiences and the deaths of Allied soldiers held prisoner during the war. The screenplay was written by Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson, two writers who were blacklisted in Hollywood at the time. The credits on the movie titles, before they were fixed many years later, credited the book's author Pierre Boulle for the screenplay. Boulle won an Oscar for that screenplay, and in 1984 the real authors of the screenplay were honoured by the Academy, posthumously. Leaving all that politics aside, the movie is a superb piece of cinema, and the climax is one of the great moments in movie history, and not just for the blowing up of the bridge. Alec Guinness was never better than in those scenes at the end of the bridge on the River Kwai. Making a dark comedy, which tells the story of a teenage girl who has suffered sexual and psychological abuse, who is attacked by and eventually kills a serial killer, is a big ask, but Freeway, which to my mind is Reese Witherspoon's best movie, pulls it off. It's essentially Little Red Riding Hood done as a horror comedy. Vanessa Lutz is a teenager whose mother Ramona, played by Amanda Plummer, is a drug addict and sex worker. The mother's boyfriend Larry, played by Michael T. Weiss, is an abusive drug dealer. When Ramona and Larry are arrested, Vanessa escapes from a social worker and decides to hitchhike to her grandmother's house in another town. Vanessa hitches a ride with a guy called Bob, played by Kiefer Sutherland, who tells her he's a school counsellor, but in actual fact is a serial killer. When attacked by Bob, Vanessa fights back. She's one of cinema's best tough chicks, and shoots him, leaving him handicapped and disfigured. She's arrested and charged with attempted murder.
Holy shit! Look who got beat with the ugly stick! Is that you, Bob?
Her protests that Bob is a dangerous psychopath are ignored. Vanessa makes some friends in prison, including Rhonda, played by Brittany Murphy, and Hispanic gang leader Mesquita, played by Alana Ubach. During a prison transfer, Vanessa and Mesquita escape, and Vanessa heads for grandmother's house. Meanwhile, two detectives, led by Dan Hedaya, re-examine the evidence and find out that Bob is a serial killer. His social wife, Mimi, played very funnily by Brooke Shields, commits suicide, and Bob heads to grandmother's house. This one's transgressive, it's funny as hell, and refreshingly original. I like Freeway a lot, and the prison scenes where Vanessa makes a toothbrush shank are strangely the emotional heart of the movie. You should check it out. So there are my 4 very different prison movies. There are a lot more, and I'll scroll them at the end of the video, just to give you a heads up on where my head was at when I was making this one. So thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. I'm about 98 subscribers away from the magic number of 1,000, which then lets me do things like live streams and other things I want to do with the channel. So if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing it, and I'll be your friend forever. But anyway, thank you for watching again, and please follow the signs, wear a mask, and I'll catch you next time.